Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Hank Cisco Show. Let's go.
Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of the Hank Cisco Show. Today I'm very excited to have one of Norristown's own and one of Norristown High School's own, Bishop Richard McCray from the Church of God at 329, 315 Eastwood Street in Norristown, right here in Norristown. Bishop, welcome to the Hank Cisco Show. And I know you know Hank, and I want to tell everybody out there that the family's very happy for all the prayers and good wishes as Hank goes through this very difficult time. But I saw him yesterday, and I got to tell you, I walked in and he goes, "Hey Stan, how you doing?" And he looked great, and he's going, "Let's bob and weave, let's bob and weave." So any of you out there have seen this show, you know what I'm talking about.
Thanks so much for inviting me, and I'm glad to be a part of this show today.
Yeah. So let's tell people a little bit about yourself. You're a Norristown native, right?
Yes. No, I'm not a native.
Oh,
I moved here in 1979 from South Carolina.
South Carolina. What part of South Carolina?
It's near Myrtle Beach, a little town called Loris, close to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. But that's where I grew up. That's my home. But after the death of my mom, and my dad had died earlier in 1973, we relocated here to live with one of my sisters.
I see. So how many children got involved? How many children were involved
in my family?
In your family?
There was 12 of us.
12
there were 6 boys and 6 girls.
Did your sister took all of you in?
No. She's one of the older ones, and I'm one of the younger ones. So there was myself and my youngest sister Ella, still minors, and we moved up here to live with my sister Betty. And we've been here ever since, other than when I went to college in Tennessee.
You almost had your own parish with 12 kids.
Yeah, and our family, we grew up in a very traditional Southern Baptist church, which is 147 years old. It's on the historical archives in South Carolina because post-slavery, it was a school during the week and a church on Sundays. You know, so that's my family's name is on the cornerstone of that church.
And we're going to get back to that a little bit because I think everybody, I know for me, history is very important. And who we are today as Americans is really based on the shoulders of all, we're built on the shoulders of all the other people who came here, the good, bad, and the ugly part, but we're all here at the same place. So it's real important to understand, for people to understand the history of how we got here. But so we'll get back to that. So you moved up here, and you were about how old when
16.
16 when you moved up here.
Yeah.
So you're up here, and then you went to high school here.
Yes. We moved here in September of '79, and I started working at McDonald's, and then we, of course, was enrolled at Norristown High School, myself and my youngest sister. And then my sister had one son at that time, so the 3 of us was attending high school here.
Oh, and her son was almost the same age as you. Huh?
Yes.
So there was a pretty big age difference. Well, at least there was 12 years. We know at least 12 years difference to begin with.
Yeah.
So you walked into the high school today, and you know, I always have nostalgic when I walk into my old high school. The grade school, not so much, but high school, yes, because it's such an a transformative time in a young person's life. You enter as a baby and you come out as an adult, basically. What was it like when you walk into the high school?
Pretty much the same, because 4 of my children graduated from this school so far. So I'm used to being here for different things all the time. So very much familiar with this school.
That's great. Now, the other thing is, I want to talk a little bit about the church itself, but before we get into that, so where did you go to college at?
I went to Monco at first for a year. Then I went to Lee University, located in Cleveland, Tennessee, right outside of Chattanooga, about 19 miles from Chattanooga, Tennessee.
And did you take up philosophy?
No, my degree there was biblical education. I was pursuing a degree in biblical education.
So you always had a feeling that you would wind up being a pastor?
Yes. Yeah, I was actually in the ministry when I was in high school.
So you dedicated your life fairly early in this. So your family in South Carolina.
Yes.
Were they? By the way, my daughter lives in Charleston.
Oh yeah.
So we
very
go down.
familiar with Charleston.
I'll tell you that everybody, the people down there are very special.
Yes.
Especially the old Charleston group of people. You know, I don't know about so much the new, but you get down there and everybody. It's a different flavor when you go into the South. It really is.
Yeah.
It totally is. So anyhow, so you're down in Charleston, but was your family deeply religious? You said you were raised in that traditional.
My mom was. My mom was very religious. She was a self-taught musician, and so she directed one of the choirs in the church, and then she played the organ. So, but my dad, not so much. He was a good man. My father was a sharecropper. He was a good man, but was not a church-going man. Let's say it like that. He wasn't a church-going man.
Probably working very hard to make
Yeah,
to get
yeah.
by.
Yeah.
So your mother kind of brought you
Yes.
into this thing.
Yeah.
Was there any particular moment in your life? I mean, I've talked to priests and rabbis and things like that, and a lot of them were like you. They had this calling to begin with, and there was something that moved them toward it. But usually there was something in their life that kind of gave them the push over the edge, that said that this is what their calling is. Did something like that happen to you, or did you?
Well, that's exactly what we refer to it as, the calling. It was, I was in high school, and then we were having service that Sunday morning in our church, it was an anniversary service. The church started in 1923, actually on Thanksgiving. That was the first service they had it on Thanksgiving Day. And at the end of the service, we have what we refer to as an altar service, where people are encouraged to go and draw closer to God, or resolve unresolved issues in their lives. And I just felt very compelled to acknowledge that I had a sense of a calling in my life. We call it the calling, when we acknowledge that internally we feel as if God has called us to ministry. And then most of the time, the senior pastor will start you on what we call your spiritual journey, as far as giving you instructions on how to seek the voice of God, read the Word of God. Then we go through different Bible training institutes to help us clarify our ministry. Some people go into what we call evangelism, which means they go out more often than they're at the local church. Others do what we call missionary work. They go to foreign countries and things like that. And then some do what I chose, the pastoral path, which you do more counseling and oversight at the congregation.
So you kind of nurture your
Yes.
flock,
Yeah.
so to speak. Yeah, I always called it I was raised as a Roman Catholic.
Right.
And I was actually an altar boy in the Vatican, so that's the height of my religious career,
yeah.
by the way. But I always call it the St. Paul conversion, where
Yeah.
St. Paul got struck by
Right.
lightning and said, "Oh yeah, God, you want me to do something here
Right.
with that?"
Right.
And I always call it the St. Paul moment
Right.
when that happens. So now that you make that, you're a young man and you make that transition, and then what I find is when you make a transition like that, you actually change. Something about a person changes when they make a commitment to something.
Yes.
And I would assume you had that feeling also.
Yeah, well, one scripture says that God puts his heart inside of our heart, which means his thinking process. It helps us to see things with his viewpoint. Ordinarily, I would deal with things a little differently, but because of the purpose of God in my life, I try to seek the clarity of God's word on situations or people. Sometimes people can really, really challenge you, and you would like to let go of them. But the internal voice of God says, no, you got to keep working with them the same way I work with you. You have to keep working with them, help to make them better than what they appear to be at this present time.
So in going down that road, and obviously no names or anything, but can you think of a special case that you had that resistance that you had to use, that you somehow broke through? Can you think of any particular cases where you...
I'm trying to think in particular. It's just sometimes, I think in particular when you're dealing with people that have addictions. And I went back to school to get a second degree in drug and alcohol counseling.
Wow.
Because I wanted a better understanding of what a person is going through when they're dealing with those types of issues. And I'm glad I did that, because it gave me a lot of insight on when people are struggling in addictions, how to help them navigate.
I must tell you, that is very impressive, that to me. I don't know if there are many other ministers or priests who actually take the time to do that. Did you find other ministers in those classes? No,
not. There are other ministers in that vocation. I have dear friend that actually runs a drug and alcohol center up in Johnstown, Pennsylvania.
And there I can understand
Right.
that you really do, but I would say a pastor with that type of understanding of because it really, today, it doesn't know any economic class.
Right, correct.
It's all over, from the very, very wealthy to the very poorest. It's there. Let me throw something that might be a little controversial, but I think we need to have these discussions or else we never solve problems.
Right.
How do you feel about these drug injection sites, these monitored drug injection sites? I mean, I have certain feelings about it, but I'm interested in yours.
I think it's challenging. You have people that have issues, and you don't want them to overdose. And I guess that's one opportunity to keep them from overdosing, to help them manage their addiction while they're trying to encourage them to come out of their addiction. So I don't really oppose to them per se, but I guess it could be very challenging for communities to have them.
So what you're saying is a site just can't be a site for you to come in,
Right.
take your shot, the doctor makes sure you're alive when you leave.
Right.
It
needs to deal with the whole person.
You see it as an attempt to move the person off the drugs, because to me, when I think of an injection site, is, well, he injects and 4 hours later he's got to go out and find more drugs and come back and inject. So he's not going to have the money to buy one, so he's probably robbing someplace to get it. And to me, it just advocates that. But you're actually injecting, and I'm glad we're having this conversation because you may have given me another window of thought that says it's got to be more than just this. There has to be a tremendous effort to make sure these people get off of this stuff.
Correct.
In some fashion.
It should be, I would hope. I mean, I haven't done much research about them, but I would hope it's more than just helping them with the high.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of repercussions from addiction.
Yeah,
the innocent suffer, children and spouses, family members. That sometimes mothers. I've seen mothers with only one child have to deal with that type of addiction in their family, and they're looking for this person to be their caregiver as they get older, and they're not changing their behaviors or lifestyles. And if all we're doing is helping them to manage the high, that's not going to really change the situation.
Well, I have a personal story involving an employee in our building and one of a tenant that I have, and he was a grandfather, and he was trying to help his grandson get off the drugs, and one day the grandson came up and was started beating up the grandfather to get money in the apartment, and the grandfather went out in the balcony, he's yelling help, and one of my employees saw what was going on and rushed up to the apartment. And when he opened the door, the grandson grabbed him, and that was it. There was a huge fight. He was injured pretty severely, my employee, and the grandfather ultimately was murdered.
Oh, sorry.
Which was really a tragedy. And so you're trying to help somebody, and they just can't control it. So these things, the drugs is just a terrible situation, completely out of sight. There's a great book, and I highly recommend it, is Don't Forget to Tell Your Children. And it's about marijuana and everything else like that. And it talks about how this can affect people in different ways, and some of it very tragically. So it's an easy read, and it's a great book, but it just lists everything that goes on. There's nothing good in drugs of any sort.
Correct.
Really, from liquor all the way up, and things like that. So now you've got that, and so now you're a fairly rounded pastor in truly trying to help your flock and the people that are in your community and everything else like that. Do you have any interfaith type of meetings with other religions? With Catholic and
there's a group based out of Philadelphia called Power, and which is an interfaith group. I'm a part of the Norristown Ministerium, Greater Ministerium, which is predominantly a Christian association, or I should say exclusively a Christian association. But the Power is a more interfaith, that they have Catholics, Protestants, evangelicals, Muslims, Jewish people. That's a part of that group that help deal with social, economical situations. They're in the campaign right now with better funding or better pay salaries, a livable wage, dealing with airport situations with fair livable wages and things such as that we participate in from time to time.
So really the Christian community, as well as parts of the Muslim religion and the Jewish religion, have done reach out with each other.
Yes.
I know they have do that, which is great because it helps people to understand what's going on. But it's also important that the people in the parishes and in the flocks and in the congregations and in the mosque participate in this thing.
Yes.
Do you get your people to participate
Yes.
in this? Your ministry?
Yeah, we have to find
flock?
common ground. We
Yeah.
have to find the common ground that helps unite us, as opposed to things that can easily divide us. We have to find common ground to help unite this community.
Yeah, because as well as I do, history is paved with people who want to kill other people in the name of God,
Right.
which to me is kind of ridiculous, because why would God want human beings to do the lowest form of animal life, which is to kill another animal?
Right.
To me, it just doesn't make sense. I don't think God would never ask you to kill somebody or maim somebody in His name. So to me, it just seems like ridiculous to do that.
Yes.
One of the other things that is really very important to me is I would not consider myself a very religious person. I don't go to church every Sunday or anything else like that. So please, Mom, if you're there watching me, don't strike me down, because my mom used to go to church all the time and drag me with her.
Yeah.
But as I said, I was an altar boy for years, and my father would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning,
Right.
and I was doing the 6 o'clock mass. So I calculated, based on all the masses I served at, that I'm good till I'm 87 years old. Okay, I just want to let you know that. So I'm good. But one of the things and it happened when I was in school, they used to read a passage of the Bible or have some kind of religious reading. And I remember my homeroom teacher, who had been a teacher for like 25 years, and she was retiring. And she would always read a passage. And we had different faiths in our homeroom. And she would always pick something, or have the kids pick something from either the Old or New Testament to read. And we all, hey, no problem.
Right.
And this is in public school. And then it came down that you couldn't do it anymore.
Right.
And she says, well, I know it's the law, but I'm retiring after this year. And I'm still reading the Bible. If you don't want me to listen to it, you can go out in the hall. But none of the kids left.
Right.
None of the kids left. And I think it was because we wanted to hear about something better that made us better outside ourselves, and the stories that were told in the Bible. Today, I really resent, and I really resent the fact that there are people that are trying to prevent the discussion of God in the public square. It's almost like the government is forcing us to believe in the religion of atheism.
Right.
And I've often said that. I think the Attorney General Barr just gave a speech almost saying exactly what I've been saying for a while, that the public square is for speaking about God. And people say, well, there's no discipline in schools and it's going all down. Well, if you trace it back, it really goes back to the fact they started taking out discussions of God and something better, a morality better than what it is. If you believe in only the state is corrupt. What are you going to do? But if you don't set something up better, what do young people have to hold on to? I mean, what's your feeling about that?
Yeah, I think our country kind of dropped the ball with that when we took even if it was just used as a book of wisdom, and I think it had a role and had a place.
Well, it's a history book.
The same way we need a driving manual to give us a basic understanding of how to navigate the roads of life. That book became a basic understanding of how to navigate life. And we brought negligent harm by taking it out, But then again, the challenge also should be to each family, are we reading it every day at home? And I have to confess, I may read it individually, but not as a family. So we might need to challenge each family to go back to reading it at home as well.
That's a good point. When I've read it, I've usually, right now when I've ever read it, I'm in church either at a wedding or a funeral or some other bar mitzvah or something like that, but I'm always drawn to it as a history book. It really is a history book.
Right.
It's history of human beings. It goes back thousands of years.
Yes, that is correct.
And so many great things have come out from our belief in God.
Yes.
Something bigger than us. And I mean, the 10 Commandments in and of themselves is a map, as you said, which is a great analogy and a great picture to paint a roadmap to life.
Right.
You know, telling us how to manage our lives.
Right. Yeah.
In very short 10 easy sentences, as composed to all the laws that we create
Right.
in man that are ridiculous
Right.
half the time. Really, when you only need 10 laws.
Right.
You don't need all the rest of the stuff that's out there.
Right. Right.
It's really very simple.
It's like one of my sons came home from college one semester, wasn't doing that well. And he said, well, Dad, a D and an A is the same. And I said, well, no, it's not the same. So this voice inside of me said, have an intelligent conversation with him. Have an intelligent conversation. Because I'm thinking, I'm spending all of this money and you're telling me it's the same. So I said to him, listen, if you went into a store and it had A, B, C, D quality of sneakers, but they all cost the same price, which one would you buy? He said, I would buy the A quality sneakers. I said, why? You said they're all the same. I said, it's not so much that you got a D, it's did you put the quality in. So if you put forth the A effort and get a D, I can understand that. But I know you have A quality effort. He said, Dad, I get it. So I'm saying, don't tell me it's the same because it's gonna cost you more to go back and do it over. So a lot of times in life, we want the easy way, but we're not putting in the hard effort. And if we just learn to put the effort in, we'll make the right results every time. And that's life a lot of times. We want the easy way. We think this book is going to change people's mind. All it's going to do is give them better choices to make. You know, God will not ever take over the control of our minds. That will make us robotic. That's the power that he gave everyone that comes into this world, the power of choice. The power of choice. But if we don't give people the proper information, how can we make the proper choices? And that's the danger when we took this word out of school. And that's the danger when we don't read it. And that's the danger when we cut other people off without even getting to know who they are. We just cut them off. We just prejudge them just based on preconceived ideals that we may have heard about other faiths or other beliefs, and we never give people a chance to try to find the truth. Truth will make you free. That's what the word says. It will, when you know it, it will set you free. I use an example. I say to people, what is 2 and 2? And they say 4. I say, no, if you put a minus sign in between it, it's 0. It depends on what it is indication. 20, it could be 22. So based on what that little signature might be, 2 and 2 is not always 4. You know?
Right, it can change things.
Yeah,
in
it
life.
can change things.
It can change things in life.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's interesting that that we see you know, the persecutions around the world, and yet, you know, Christianity. If we really are true Christians, we try to, you know, understand fellow man. We try to help wherever we can and everything else like that. And it's very interesting what has been going on in the last in my lifetime.
Right.
In my lifetime. So the other things that I wanted to talk about is a little bit about the history of how important the black churches have been to the people. Now you're originally in the South.
Right.
I'm sure your father, his grandfather probably was a slave at one time. In the South. So did your father ever talk about the background of your family? And
my father's mother was a very progressive woman. She owned her own home. She owned her own land in Dillon, South Carolina. I don't know much about her parents, but I've heard them talk about her, my grandmother, Louise. So
your grandmother actually was able to purchase ground
Yes.
and everything else
Yes.
in the deep South, which had to be what, turn of the century
Yes.
in that time frame, which had to be, I mean, that was like the height of the KKK
Right.
at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
She must have been
she
must have been very
there were
interesting
9
person.
of them, 9 children that she and my granddaddy had, but they were very progressive. She was very progressive. She was not an educated lady, but believed in hard work, and for that, she got the end result: property, land, and a lot of my father's siblings migrated to New York and made their living there. I think he and his brother stayed in the South. We lived in New York in the early '70s, but Dad was not a city person, so we ended up going back to South Carolina.
I kind of agree with him, but that's another story.
But she was a very hardworking lady, and owned property, owned land, and so.
But no one ever talked about the history of your family other than back to your grand. Have you ever curious about that?
To some extent. I have one cousin that's in her 70s, and she probably knows more than what I know about the family. But yeah.
There's some great shows like Where Did I Come From?
Right.
Or these shows. My wife and I were driven to take the 23andMe test.
Right.
And it's really interesting because they'll list all your relatives that you have, but they also list your ancestry, and they can tell you where you came from and where it started.
Wonderful.
And when I looked at mine, it was really interesting. I'm Italian.
Right.
I'm like 87% Italian, something like that. But I'm also Arab.
Okay.
And I'm also East African.
Okay.
I'm 4% East African, which is really, that's probably where I got my curly hair from. but which is really interesting. So it gave me a whole nother perspective on life, because when you think about it, it had nothing to do with America. The whole world is a melting pot for the most part.
Yeah, we have probably more in common than most people realize.
Yeah. And sometimes real good pastors, and you come with the highest credentials, by the way, and I acknowledge you for that.
Thank you.
But really great pastors bring that out in the people they come in contact with.
Yeah.
And they have that ability to give that peace to people that say it's okay. So the church that you were part of in the South was probably really important to the black community at the time.
Oh yeah. High Hill Missionary Baptist Church, like I said, was a school.
Still in operation?
It's still in existence.
Wow.
It's still in existence, yes.
I'll have to get the address, because when I go down to South Carolina and visit, I usually like trying to take these little history tours. I go, I know a guy by the name of Pastor McCray used to.
Some of my members, while on vacation, actually went to visit that church.
Oh, really?
They wanted to go, and I didn't know they were going to do it, so they sent me a video of them being at that church. My mother is buried there at that church. My father is buried in his family plot in Dillon. But I was very impressed that they thought enough to visit the church that I grew up in, and things like that. It's very much in existence, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and I know Pennsylvania, Philadelphia is very important in the black community as far as the Bethany Baptist Church, which is on 2nd or 3rd Street. I forget exactly where it is, but that was the first black church owned by
Mother Bethel.
Mother Bethel.
Yes.
It was owned by the congregation.
Right. Started by Richard Allen.
Richard, it was really interesting, and it's a beautiful church at this time, and it has. I've been there. I've been inside there. In fact, I don't know if you know Colonel West.
No.
Colonel West is kind of a national figure too. He was a congressman at one time, and we're personal friends. So he came up to Philadelphia to do some stuff and stayed at my house, and we went down, and he wanted to see the church. And I said, come on, let's go see the church, because he's from Atlanta, Georgia, and he lived right across the street from Ebenezer Baptist Church, and they were part of that. So he had a relationship with the parents, had the relationship with Dr. King and everything else. It was really interesting to understand what's going on. So he was down there to see that.
Here's an interesting fact. New Hope Baptist Church here in Norristown on Oak Street, when Dr. King was at the seminary in Chester, he actually attended that church.
Oh, really?
A lot of people don't know that, but he actually attended that church.
Really?
New Hope Baptist Church.
Yeah.
It's called, it's Full Gospel now, New Hope Full Gospel, but he actually attended that church at one point.
Yeah. Well, I had an honor several weeks ago. I was able to sit and talk to Alveda King, Dr. King's granddaughter.
Okay.
But our conversation, and I think I talked to you a little bit about this, our conversation turned toward the understanding between all Americans. And we talked about how one of God's greatest gifts to human beings, which no other animal on this planet has, is the gift of forgiveness.
Yes.
And that in order for society to move together, we have to learn how to forgive. And because we stand on the shoulders of all the people from before us, the good, bad, and the ugly. And that's who we become. We are accumulation of our life experiences as a human species. And it was really a great conversation that we had. So, it's important that you and me and other people of our thinking move the dial a click whenever we can.
Right.
Because we're all in this thing together.
I think people think we deserve to hold anger towards other people. But forgiveness frees you. It does not excuse the wrong that was done
Correct.
towards you,
Correct.
but it frees you.
I think it
Because
makes you more powerful.
You have to hold that anger. And every time that image or that ideal or that name is mentioned, you have to create that anger again in you. And growth cannot take place if you have bitterness inside of you. And we have to learn to let it go. And we think by letting it go, it excuses the wrong that was done to us, but it's not excusing the wrong that was done to us.
No,
it's empowering you. It's giving you the freedom to heal.
I definitely think it makes you stronger,
Yeah.
and makes you freer, and gives you actually a more powerful person in the gift of forgiveness, because it's you giving that forgiveness. It has nothing to do with that person at all,
Right.
or what that particular group or whatever it was.
Right.
Because God only knows we have enough people to be angry at
Right.
in life, you know.
Right. Right.
But if we can forgive, and it's little things that we do that can help to relieve, to teach you how to forgive.
Right.
Like I'm driving here this morning, and this lady just came out of nowhere and just came right in front of me.
Right.
Nah, I could have been a real, you know what,
Right.
beat my horn, you know, give her the high sign and everything else like that. But I said, hey, she didn't hit me, I didn't hurt her. I'm fine with it.
Right.
You know, I forgive you.
Right.
You know, for doing that. So, but that was a little test of me being
Right.
able to forgive.
Right.
So I always challenge myself to forgive.
Right.
You know, when
Yeah.
my nephew gives me a hard time in business, I go, oh God, but I forgive him.
Right.
You know, so I do those little tests, and I think that's a great way for people to learn the steps to the bigger forgiveness.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah. So, anyhow, so I wanted to get a little bit more into the different events that you have at the church. So let's talk about what's
The Norristown Church of God will be turning 96 this year. This coming, actually it's Thanksgiving Day, but we celebrate the third Sunday in November for the most part. Just acknowledging how we've been in this community. It actually started on the corner of Lafayette and Mill Street in Norristown, near the Transportation Center. But it has spent the majority of its time on the corner of Green Valley Road and Wood Street, right across from Murillo's Recycling Auto Part facility. And so that church has been there. It's a Pentecostal church, one of the oldest, if not the oldest Pentecostal evangelical church here in Norristown. And over its history I am the 16th pastor. And I've just moved they've been three pastors prior to me, Bishop Cobbs, Bishop Isaac Brunson, Ernest Page, that have had long tenure. I'm now the second or the third longest tenure at that church. I'm going into my 18th year.
18th year
as a senior pastor. I did 5 years as assistant pastor. So if I would count all of my time, I have had the longest tenure. But as far as senior pastor, I'm going into my 18th year, but I'm third in rank.
You know, one thing, meeting you, there seems to be a lightness in you that's very interesting. It seems like you're really happy where you are in life and doing what you want to do. I get that vibe from you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Anyone and everyone, especially in the ministry, can be very challenging. Like I said, my wife and I, we have 7 children, 6 sons and a daughter, plus a dog. And we've been married 25 years this past June.
Yeah.
And my wife actually
By the way, I'd like to meet her because she's probably really
She works for family services for young women coming out of incarceration, helping them get back in the swing of life, especially reacclimating with their children. And so, but you'll go through highs and lows. And I went through a low period, and she kept saying, you don't seem like yourself. You don't seem like you're happy. And I was really struggling. Have I done everything at this church I need to do? And when I got past that hurdle, that I had not done everything and got to peace, it's just a load lifted. And it's like everything is not going to be where you want it to be at this present time. But I know I'm where I need to be.
Yeah,
and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
I just want to let you know, it kind of comes through.
Yeah.
Just getting to know you, you kind of feel really at peace.
Well, I'm on the other side of it.
You're definitely on the other side of it. We could continue talking
Yeah.
for a long period of time
Yeah.
because there's so many things I'd want to get into. Do you have a web page or anything else like
We
that?
do have
Or
a
what-
web page,
Yeah, could you-
Norristown Church of God.
Okay, and you'll see that below the screen here.
Yeah.
And you have that.
We stream every Sunday.
Every Sunday, you stream
Yeah.
every Sunday, and you stream it as www.churchofgod.
Yes,
Okay, and how about, is there an email address that people can contact you if they wanted to contact?
Yeah, you can McCray Richard S31@gmail.com.
Again, that'll also appear
Thank you.
on the screen here. In
Yeah.
fact, we make sure that we'll give that to the folks so that they
Thanks
can
so much.
do that.
Yeah.
But I tell you, it's been an honor and a pleasure to speak with you, Bishop, and I look forward to the invite to come
Thanks so
to the
much.
church. I would love to come over and just
Anytime,
meet that,
anytime.
and I will take that as an invitation. Thank you
Thanks
so
so
much.
much for having me. I
Pleasure,
appreciate it
pleasure,
as well.
pleasure. That's it for the Hank Cisco Show, and just remember, two things are bad for your heart: running upstairs and running down people. Thank you.